You just know that when that song was written, that someone was outside and really had a mystical experience with nature and creation. How many of you have had such an experience being outside? Hold your hands up. Take a look around. There's just something incredible about nature, that our nature as spiritual being and all of nature, that nature seems to put us back in touch with our spirit and being a part of all that is. And that's what we want to talk about today in honor of this Saturday, which is Earth Day. You know, life is always about lessons and blessings. If you think about it, there's a lesson to be found in every blessing, and there's a blessing to be found in every lesson if we really look deep enough. There's a story about two little boys who were learning a lesson. They were up one morning. Mom was making pancakes for breakfast, and they were both in the kitchen, sort of under her feet, a little 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, excited about eating breakfast. And as the first pancake was almost ready, the two brothers started fighting over who was going to get the first one. How many of you I have a sister, we're 18 months apart. I understand fighting over the first pancake. Anybody else, or you have children like that? So they're fighting over who's going to get the first pancake, and the mom stops and says, "Boys, remember what Jesus would have taught. Let your brother go first. Give to your brother first." And so the older boy turned to the little one and said, "Jason, you get to be Jesus this morning." Sometimes it may take a while before we get we learn the whole lesson there. But there's much to be gleaned and learned from nature. There's a beautiful scripture from Psalms that says, "The heavens tell the glory of God. The skies display God's marvelous craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make God known. They speak without a sound or a word. Their message has gone out to all the earth, and their words to all the world." That nature really is speaking to us. And so have you ever contemplated, maybe at any particular time, what is nature trying to speak to you? As I was thinking about this talk this week, I sat down and I wrote, "I learned from the sun that the light shines upon everyone. I learned from the moon that the light is also meant to be reflected. The breeze taught me how to be gentle at all times. The trees inspired me to grow strong and still be flexible. The rain taught me the necessity of letting life soak in. The flowers taught me to share my essence freely. The mountains taught me to be colossal and stand strong. The ocean taught me that life is filled with diversity, beautiful, both above the waves and below. The canyons and desert taught me that nature's incomprehensible vastness is inspiring me to discover my own inner vastness. And as I watch the ants and the birds and the bees, I realize that we're created to accomplish enormous and profound things by working together. With nature as my teacher, I realize that every living thing has purpose and value. Every creature is holy and beautiful in its own way. I too, and you, are part and parcel of this one majestic, universal, intelligent life experienced as nature. That nature truly is a wonderful teacher for us. So often in life, how many of you feel like your life is sort of planned when there's not a lot of wiggle room, that we have things planned and then the next plan, or your life gets very habitual, very routine? And sometimes we're in that, and we begin to feel boxed in. We may not even know that that's exactly what we're feeling, but we just feel like we are sort of bound to a particular routine or a particular reality. Well, if you think about it, we live in a box culture. I mean, we go home and we live in a box house. We attend work and school in box buildings, box classrooms. Anybody work in a box cubicle or have worked in a box cubicle? And then we get in our box automobile and we sit in front of a box computer. We talk on a box today. We listen to music on a box. We go back home in our box automobile and we sit on our box chair or sofa, and then we watch a box television. And a lot of the times, a lot of the food we eat comes out of a box that we don't even realize how we've become so box enculturated. Well, there's a powerful scripture that reminds us that we weren't meant to be boxed in or bound by any particular current reality. Would you show me this scripture? Scripture comes from 2 Corinthians. I can't tell you how much I long for you to enter this wide open, spacious life. We didn't fence you in. The smallness you feel comes from within you, but your lives aren't small, but you're living them in a small way. I'm speaking as plainly as I can and with great affection. Open up your lives. Live openly and expansively. To live openly and expansively is what we're called to do. The transcendentalist philosopher Emerson said, in nature, currents of the universal being circulate through me. Currents of the universal being circulate through me. Not only when we're in nature, but certainly being in nature helps remind us that this is going on. Many cultures have long known that nature is healing. When I lived in Hawaii, I learned of sometimes when the Hawaiians, before they would go in the house, they would go around and rub their hands on certain plants, in particular the tea plant, T-I, and they would rub their hands on the plants. And when I inquired about what that was meant to do, they said it's meant for us to release everything that we're carrying. We just give it, we're in constant exchange with nature, and so we cast our cares upon them so that when we enter into the household, we can be present to our family. Isn't that a beautiful teaching? Well, what we know and just instinctively know is true. Science is now beginning to recognize this same thing. There's a recent study that appeared in Science and Spirit magazine titled How Nature Heals Us. It's a study that was taking place at Texas A&M University, and the lead professor was Dr. Roger Ulrich. What they did 3 different tests. The first was a test of people that drive basically the same distances to work and back every day. One set of the people they studied went through a relatively scenic route, a route that had nature along the way. The other group of people, going basically the same distance to similar types of jobs, traveled on the freeway, passing buildings. They really didn't see any nature. And in studying those, they said those that commuted along scenic roads recovered more quickly from stressful driving conditions than those who saw billboards, buildings, and parking lots. They also noted that they discovered something called inoculation, that the drivers who had taken the scenic route responded more calmly to stressful situations even throughout the day. The second study they did, they went to a hospital and tracked patients who were recovering from gallbladder surgery. And they tracked similar patients. For example, if they had a male who was a smoker between the ages of 40 and 50, they put one in a room that overlooked scenery and the other in a room that overlooked buildings and parking lots. So with all of these people recovering from gallbladder surgery, they matched up similar people who had had the similar surgery. The only difference was some were looking out over nature, some were looking out over concrete. They said those patients recovering from gallbladder surgery, the ones that could see trees from their hospital beds, needed fewer painkillers, had less negative effects, and had shorter hospital stays. The study was so profound it's prompted hospitals to begin to take that into consideration to reduce their cost. And then the third study they conducted in Chicago in a public housing area. They gathered people from the same socioeconomic bracket and the same ethnic group. They put them in identical apartments, one apartment building, but there was only one difference. All people were on the second, third, or fourth floor. Some apartments looked out over greenery, and some apartments looked out over the parking lot and other buildings. Those that looked out over the greenery said they had stronger feelings of being in unity. They knew more people. They were connected and helped support one another. They were less violent, less risk of street crime, and less aggression between members of the household. furthermore, the children in that study, in those same apartments, the children that could see nature from their windows were better able to concentrate and to control compulsive behavior than the children who overlooked concrete instead of trees. Isn't that powerful? Something that we've already known. And I think we're very, very blessed. And perhaps some of you are drawn to this area. How many of you come out of sort of a concrete world? Any of you? And oh, that's a lot of hands. Drawn to a place where you're surrounded by more natural beauty, that you literally can feel it. I know if I want to be inspired, I absolutely cannot sit inside a building and just be closed in. I must be able to see something expansive, because there's something about being a part of that which is open and expansive. It opens and expands us. And so today, when we look at our relationship with nature, we know that we're in this reciprocal relationship with trees when it comes to the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. We know that we're impacted and in relationship with our surroundings. But if we could take this and use it, we can learn what the indigenous cultures taught. The indigenous cultures taught that there are three things that nature is always seeking to teach us, to help heal us, and that we can either find ourselves bound by a current reality or allow our spirit to be set free. So can any of you think of any area in your life that may be bound by current reality? Or okay, so three of you. Anybody else? I think we've all probably got somewhere if we really think about that, and that we could stretch ourselves and set our spirit free. The first thing that they taught about nature is in nature to learn to be in awe, A-W-E. You know the word awesome, awe. Socrates said, wisdom begins in wonder. The Buddha said, if we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole world would change. The writer of Psalms wrote, you made me happy, God, so happy. I saw your works and shouted for joy. How magnificent your work, oh my God. To realize that, to just take the time to slow down and to look at what is all around us, to renew our sense of awe. Alex Trebek, the game show host, said, if you can't be in awe with Mother Nature, there's something wrong with you. When I went to the Parliament of World Religions last year, I had the privilege of hearing Jane Goodall. Remember the lady with the chimps? She was there and talked about her time in nature. And she said something I wrote down on my phone. She said, it was in the forest that I found peace and purpose for my life, and peace that passes understanding. There's truly something about being in that place of awe that allows us to do that. And in 2005, every year the Unity has a convention, a conference. In 2005, it was hosted on an Alaskan cruise ship. And I had the privilege of going, and there were probably 800 or 900 other Unity ministers went along with all the other people on that cruise line. And it was just fabulous. How many of you have ever been on an Alaskan cruise? It's quite spectacular. One morning, they had, it was on the itinerary ahead of time, but if you got up at 6 o'clock this particular morning and went out, they said they would give you a blanket and one of their traditional bowls of split pea soup that was in a bread bowl. I don't even like split pea soup, but it was good that morning. There's something about being on the deck with hundreds of people holding a warm bowl of soup with a black blanket wrapped around you. The reason we were doing that is because we were passing through and seeing the glaciers. And to see those magnificent glaciers and these huge icebergs that would fall off the glaciers. They were taught on the boat, they said that the typical iceberg, that only 1/8 is above the water, 7/8 is below the water. And I began to think about how that reflected our nature, that we can only see a portion of us, but there's so much more depth. And I was so moved by that, it really inspired me. Well, that day at lunch, I was back on the ship and I ran into another Unity minister and we sat down and we're having lunch. And I said, wasn't that incredible this morning? She said, oh, I didn't get up for that. I didn't want to get up that early. And I said, you didn't want to go see that? And she shook her glass and she said, honey, I've seen ice. I thought, you've seen ice, but you haven't seen glaciers. And in the course of the conversation, she went on to talk about how she was stuck in her life and her church was stuck. And I was thinking, maybe you should have got up to see the glaciers. But I didn't want to be thinking thoughts like that. So, but you know, sometimes there's magnificent things all around us, and we think, oh, I've seen a flower, I've heard a bird, I've seen the sunrise or the sunset. When we put ourselves back in these, the indigenous people in many sacred cultures know, take yourself to the place of awe, to really be in awe, to witness the miracle. I wrote a song one time that says, I'm going round and round, standing on solid ground. That right now, if you think about it, you are sitting in a chair in a building, and yet we are flying through space on a planet probably upside down. The mind can't comprehend that. And when you allow yourself to meditate on those things, what it does, it expands your sense of who you know yourself to be. That's an incredible gift of nature. Awe, to take your own self to that wow, blow your own mind. The second thing that nature does for us is reminds us that we are in constant communion and connection. We know that we are intricately connected to one another. Chief Seattle, in the famous speech back in the 1850s, said, every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect, all are holy in the memory and experience of my people. We know the sap which courses through the trees as we know the blood that courses through our veins. We're each part of the earth, and it is part of us. The rocky crest, the dew in the meadow, the body heat of the pony, and man all belong to the same family, the one spirit. To realize that nature reminds us that we are all connected. I Googled it, and did you know you share 50% of your DNA with a banana? I mean, you really are fruit and nuts. Yeast, a product that we cook with, we share a significant portion of DNA with yeast, with wheatgrass. 98%, they say, with the chimpanzees, about 90% with your cats. 87, the cats had to top it out. We're a little closer to cats than we are to the dogs, believe it or not. But we literally share the fabric of our life with these animals, with all of creation. And creation reminds us they know how to live in symphony. They know how to have unity and diversity and keep the circle of life going. Animals also teach us about being connected to the source. Something also that is mind-boggling, in 2009, they put a satellite tracking device on a female sandpiper, the bird a sandpiper, to see just how far they could fly without stopping. This one sandpiper flew all the way from Alaska to New Zealand without stopping, 7,258 miles. At the time, there was only one aircraft that could literally go that far without stopping, and nature can do that. I mean, to look and see a hummingbird or a butterfly and to think you can travel 200 miles, that something guides you that far. A humpback whale travels 12,500 miles. That if you really think about those things, what is it inside of all creation that guides it to where it needs to be, that causes a salmon to swim upstream? Well, when we sit with nature, it reminds us that we are equally connected, that we too can be in tune to our own internal guidance system. Because I guarantee you, whatever it is you want in your life, as much as you want anything, you would like to have divine guidance. Because if it's a question, if it's healing, if it's wanting to know what next step to take, if you had that guidance, you would know how to take that next step. Well, we can have that guidance. Deepak Chopra, in his book, How to Know God, talks about the value of spending time in nature, watching nature, meditating upon it, realizing that the same intelligence that is inherent within a rose bush or a hummingbird, that same intelligence is far greater within us. And he said that in practicing the connection, living in connection, that his life is a life of flow. And he gives one particular story that I'd like to share. He said, some months ago, I was in my office looking over a project that needed some cover art, but I didn't know a professional illustrator. As soon as I had the thought, I wonder how I can find a professional illustrator, my phone rang. It was my grown daughter, Malika, calling from India. And when I mentioned that I was looking for an illustrator, and I didn't know how I'd find one. She immediately suggested an Irish artist named Suzanne Malcolm. Neither of us had any idea where she lived. I hung up the phone and thought nothing more about it until that afternoon when a publisher friend called from London. On the off chance, I asked if he knew Susan Malcolm, but he didn't. An hour later, he found himself at a cocktail party when a person next to him got on a phone call and put the phone to his ear and said, "Hi, Suzanne." My publisher friend gave in to the sudden impulse. "Could that possibly be Suzanne Malcolm you're talking to?" he asked. Astonishingly, it was. My friend took down her telephone number and also asked her to call me. By this time, we are still on the same day. I had flown to Los Angeles for a scheduled lecture. It was early. However, so I pulled my rental car out over to the curb, and I had no idea exactly where I was. Checking my messages on the cell phone, I found one from Suzanne Malcolm. This was good news, and I dialed the number she left for me. "Hello," a woman's voice answered. "Suzanne," I said, introducing myself. "I was wondering whether you could fly over from Dublin. I think I have an art assignment for you." "Well, actually, I'm not in Ireland at the moment. I'm in Los Angeles." "Really? Where are you staying?" I asked. "I'm not sure," she replied. "Oh, yes, it's 3312 Dominic." I looked outside the car window and felt a shudder pass through me. I was parked directly in front of the house, 3312 Dominic. Those kind of divine synchronicities, divine appointments. I've had similar appointments like that, and I would imagine if you really think about it. There was a time in my life when I worked with Brio Corporation, and I needed to make a business call. And I was at home at Raleigh that day because I was moving. I was selling my house, getting ready to move. And as I was packing, I knew what time I needed to stop to make the phone call, and so I stopped a little early from packing and went over and picked up the phone call, but the phone company had already disconnected the line. I didn't think they were going to disconnect it till later. So I thought, no problem, I'll go get my cell phone. Well, that was in the day. Remember when cell phones were those bag phones that, were sort of luggable? And anyway, it wasn't charged up, it didn't work, and I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And as I walked back in, I had been packing and I had pulled out a big pack of toilet paper and I picked it up to move it and something fell out. And I bent down and picked it up, and enclosed inside that giant pack of toilet paper was a calling card for 60 free minutes. I kid you not. So I took that card, went down to a phone booth and called in and didn't miss my call. And how many of you have had something incredibly synchronistic happen in your life? Just look around. Well, if you'd like to have more of that, nature teaches us that it's promised to us. It can happen to all of us. No one is special. Deepak's not special. If you've experienced it, you're not special. You maybe are just practicing that connection. So nature reminds us, practice being in awe. Practice the connection, and then practice being in sacred service to our earth. The earth is alive and well. The earth is a living, breathing organism. And as a human species, the earth and the world is shaking us, saying, wake up and realize that we share the same lifeblood, that we need to wake up and take care of one another. In the Bible, in Genesis, it said that the heavens and the earth, that all of creation was created, and then God said, it is what? Good. That word good means it has value within it, that value's already included within it. And that means that when something has value in it, it's sort of like you may have a child or a grandchild that draws a picture for you. You have no idea what it is. But you put it on the refrigerator and you love it because to you it's valuable. It has value because you love that child. And because of that love, it's valuable. Well, so it is with creation, that creation is valuable, and it means that we're here to take care of those valued and valuable resources. That's what we are blessed with, the opportunity to do that. Richard, if you would prepare, and if you prepare Pat to show you the video. I want to close by showing you a video. I'd also like to add that our church is very blessed in that we have a sustainability team, an earth care team. sometimes when folks are new and they experience potluck like you will today, and you'll see we have real plates and cups, people say, wow, that's very fancy, that's very sustainable. And so I'd like to thank our sustainability team for really leading the way on that. That as part of our sustainability, our consciousness reveals that all of creation is connected as one. The story of creation reveals that we are to be good caregivers of creation. And as a people of faith, we commit to a renewed reverence for life and for respect of this interdependent web of existence. We commit to be good stewards of this. I selected a video to show to you that, to me, it's very moving because it shows the power of love, of care, of recognition that runs through all of creation. Would you watch this video?
This is a true story. It's about a lion named Christian. Okay, there were two men who adopted the lion, Ace Berg and John Rendell, and they bought the lion from Harrods department store. Who knows that they, who thought they sold cubs. And in 1969, and the little cub weighed 35 pounds. A year later, the little cub had grown, and he weighed 185 pounds. Mm-hmm. This is a love story, a true love story. Take a look.
So they had to return the cub to the wild. The cub now being very grown. But after being separated for over almost 2 years, the cub, this big lion, now being the leader of a pack, acts like a puppy. If that isn't a miracle, what is? And now he wants to introduce his wife to them. Love knows no limits. So I invite you to just allow that to open up your heart. That's what nature does for us. It opens us, expands us. To remember that it's sort of part of our human nature to become limited and bound, but our spirit is always wanting to set us free. I'm going to lead you in a song that will lead us into a time of meditation, and it says, "How great is our God? How great is our God?